before we start.
Mary, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
All right, good.
Yep. You just need to move into the Bend office, I think.
They're so nice to me here.
You can get. That's great. Thank you. Was that Bob? Thanks. Michelle, would you consider texting Claire just to check and see so we can give people an update on when we'll start? If you could see when
I got an out of office from Claire earlier today, but I will definitely try to see if I can get someone.
That would be terrific. Thank you. There we go. Hi, Jeff. Welcome. Whoops, I think you're on mute. You're still on mute, Jeff.
I was doing my best not to be on the road during this meeting, so that's why I'm a little late. I apologize.
That's all right. Do you know if Shayna is about to join us as well?
I will call her. Okay, I'll go on mute and give her a call.
Perfect.
I haven't spoken to her about this. We've been in other meetings the last 2 days, but not about anything to do with this. So I'm not sure what's up. Let me call her.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you. Oops, it looks like she just joined.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Jeff, I think you were just trying to call. Sorry. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All good.
Yay. I think we'll just give Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde a second to get back on and Shayna to come on. Great. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I bet Shayna will turn on her camera in a minute. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Mary Wall, Chair of the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission, and I'd like to call the Friday, May 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Fish and Wildlife Commission Interview Subcommittee to order. Today, we'll take the next step in the recruitment process for the ODF&W Director position. I will ask the other members of the interview subcommittee to introduce themselves and to give a brief general statement about the candidate pool or the process so far. And after the introductions and brief general statements, I'll name the candidates and ask each member of the subcommittee to give his or her perspective on the candidate's strengths and weaknesses and how many candidates to move forward to the final round. But before either of those, I'd like to take a few minutes just to talk about the recruitment and the candidates. I've been involved in multiple hiring processes over the years, And this one stands out for being fair, open, and broadly inclusive of people across Oregon who are engaged with, who care about, and who want to help shape how Oregon's fish, wildlife, and habitat resources are managed and protected. From the start of this process, the Fish and Wildlife Commission prioritized having an open, fair, and inclusive recruitment process, and we have worked in close collaboration with the governor's office at every step. We, the four of us of the subcommittee today, recently interviewed candidates for the director position who scored highest based on the desired attributes. And today we'll discuss what we learned in the interviews and from materials submitted by the candidates. As you know, the desired attributes for the ODF&W director were selected by the commission, and input about those attributes came from tribal nations, from Oregonians across the whole state, and from the union that represents many of the ODF&W staff. That input was also a basis for forming the interview questions for the candidates. And I'll say just a few things about the candidates themselves. Oregon would be well served by any of the candidates we interviewed in this recent round. The agency could thrive under the leadership of any of them, and each could manage and protect our fish, wildlife, and habitat resources. There was a strong candidate pool who applied. The applications were scored based on the desired attributes, and the candidates with the highest scores were interviewed. I find myself grateful, proud, and confident about moving forward with the candidates who emerged into the group we are discussing today. I'm grateful that it's a strong and capable group, and those are not just words. Not all candidate pools are this strong and capable. I'm proud that this quality of people seek to lead Oregon's Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm confident because Oregon would be well served, as I mentioned before, by any of the candidates we interviewed. The agency could thrive under the leadership of any of them, and each could manage and protect our fish, wildlife, and habitat resources. We interviewed the candidates, and now we need to move to the final round. This will be exceptionally difficult because this group of candidates offers collectively a remarkable set of talents, leadership, and vision, and we have to select who moves forward from them. The candidates offer a great deal, and we would gain by having all of them in leadership positions in Oregon. But we have to narrow the field either today or next Friday. It isn't supposed to be easy, so we will do that selection, and here's what we'll do today. There are two steps. I'll ask each interview subcommittee member to introduce her or himself and to give a brief statement about the process or candidate pool if they wish. Then I'll name the candidates we interviewed and ask each member to talk briefly about the strengths and weaknesses and anything they'd like to say about the number of candidates for the final round. We have not yet had that discussion about specific candidates as a group or between group members because that's today's purpose. So first, each member will introduce her or himself and give a brief statement about the process or candidate pool. And then we'll I'll name the candidates and ask for each member to provide perspective on strengths, weaknesses, and the number of candidates in the final round. And if we could start with introductions and a brief statement, if people choose to, with Jeff Huntington from the governor's office.
Thanks, Chair Wall. Just for those that are on, my name is Jeff Huntington. I'm the Senior Natural Resource Policy Advisor to Governor Kotek. And from the start of this process, when we learned that the Director Melcher was going to be retiring, I have been partnering with Chair Wall and Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde to ensure that we have a partnership that is durable and flexible on how we would move through a recruitment process that ultimately would meet the commission's needs and also recognize the fact that the director of each of the agencies in the executive branch ultimately has to fold into the enterprise that the governor is charged and responsible for. So we've been having a great partnership. I've appreciated it at every step. we really partnered around process, and we've gone through, but when it's come to the interviews, I want to just emphasize that we haven't had any conversations individually with any of the other committee members about my preferences or theirs, either one-on-one kind of conversations at all. I do think that this is an arduous journey for the applicants, and I know it's been a long one. But as I've gone through from scoring, I don't even know how many applications at the outset, 20 some. I feel like we made it to the 4 applicants that we spent a lot of time with in interviews on Zoom, in a way that I have a real good understanding of strengths and weaknesses and relationship to the job of the director of the Fish and Wildlife Department. So I feel like this has been a successful process, and I thank Modus, by the way, for facilitating and handling the details of it. It's been an extraordinary resource for us to have. So thank you.
Thank you. Could we go next to Shana Radford?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chair Wall, and thanks, Jeff. And I also, for everyone on the call, my name is Shana McConville Radford, and I'm the Tribal Affairs Director for Governor Kotek. So I also work closely with Jeff, and just also want to note that very much appreciate Modus and Patrick. Again, back to the process. I think this process has been very well done. This is my first time participating in this type of a process that is highly very important for tribal nations in Oregon. And I feel like the process has been fair and being inclusive of their voices and their interests as well, as part of the state government to government relations and goals, as well as creating those positive relationships on behalf of the governor. So I think that's, I guess, what I will leave at that right now. And I think I'll have more comments on the candidates as we move on. But thank you, Chair Wall.
Thank you, Shana. And we will go then to Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde.
Hello, thank you. I have really appreciated this process, and I think that everybody that spoke so far has taken this seriously, and it's been very respectful. I realize that this may seem a little excessive, but I'm going to quickly go through a couple of things. One is to reiterate what Mary Chair Wall already did, which was kind of outline the process we've been in. But I think for the public, just a reminder of how we got here is really important, so everyone's clear. Modus, I think, interviewed many stakeholders. From those interviews, we developed the attributes list. The commission as a whole adopted the attributes. We screened a large body of candidates based on those attributes, and then were able to do the interviews. And I'm going to quickly, this is for all of you who are, because I think there's nothing more important than keeping in mind our mission as an agency, which is to protect and enhance Oregon's fish and wildlife and their habitats for use and enjoyment by present and future generations. And then I'm going to quickly read through the attributes, and then I know we'll get a Chair Wall will lead us to the next step. So these were the attributes we were looking for in our candidates. Highly ethical, transparent, and committed to the tenets of good governance in a public setting. Demonstrated strategic and visionary leadership, big picture oriented with a clear vision. Demonstrable experience, problem solving using innovative approaches with proven track record of adapting proactively in an evolving decision-making environment. Extensive experience leading a large and diverse organization, including a union-represented workforce. Track record as a role model for staff, featuring active presence and engagement, promoting a safe and diverse work environment and workforce. management experience implementing a dynamic business model with a focus on fiscal integrity of a public agency. Extensive natural resource management experience, including development of policies, rules, and statutes. Demonstrated leadership identifying and addressing critical emerging issues such as climate change impacts and biodiversity loss. Extensive natural resource management experience identifying and solving complex cross-agency landscape scale problems. Demonstratable experience working with legislators and other elected officials. Deep understanding of the important relationship federally recognized tribal governments have with the department's mission and management responsibilities. Experience leading stakeholder engagement processes in which there may be diverse and mutually exclusive interests in the desired policy or program outcomes being discussed. Someone who understands and appreciates both the interests and concerns of traditional stakeholders and those of citizens whose engagement with habitat, fish, and wildlife is primarily wildlife viewing, hiking, habitat protection and conservation, and or the ecosystem services provided by public resource assets, specifically someone who understands the background and history, especially as it pertains to traditional stakeholders, but also acknowledge the need to be an inclusive organization by recognizing and seizing opportunities to build a big tent. Must be decisive while also applying adaptive management, highly effective communication skills with demonstrated experience working with diverse audiences, including stakeholders, customers, advocates, tribes, the scientific community, legislators, and other elected officials. A collaborative partner with federal and state government agencies, as well as other multi-jurisdictional bodies. All right, I'm done, but it's a serious job. I'm thankful that I am not applying because it's a lot to measure up to. So thank you for listening through. So we look at what we're trying to come up with to run this incredible agency that we have in Oregon.
Great summary. Thank you for going through that, actually. I think it's useful.
Okay.
I will, and thank you all for the introductions and statements. I will go then to the next step, which is to name the candidates. And in alphabetical order of last name, the 4 candidates who are in this round are Debbie Colbert, Shannon Hearn, Caitlin Lovell, and Jason Miner. And since everyone tuned in to hear this list, I'm going to say it one more time. Debbie Colbert, Shannon Hearn, Caitlin Lovell, and Jason Miner. And so our job is to talk about these candidates and go to each of the subcommittee members and ask for perspective on the strengths and weaknesses and anything you'd like to say about the number of candidates going forward. And if we could do the same order and start again with Jeff Huntington from the governor's office.
Great. I'll go first. An observation that I think is really apparent to me is I've finished up and have reflected on the interviews, and I've had at least a week or so to do that, maybe longer. I forget the last time we met and did our last interview. I am struck by the fact that we have 2 internal and 2 external candidates. I'm struck by the fact that I don't have a lot of weaknesses or disadvantages to identify with any of the 4. I think that there were some very different strengths that they brought to the table based on their professional and life experiences, and that is the sign of a good recruitment. So that's where I'll start out my feelings. I guess I'm going to say before I go through the candidates individually, that from my perspective, my preference would be that the full commission have at least 1 internal candidate and 1 external candidate in the mix that goes to the commission from the subcommittee. I think that's an interesting balance for us to think about striking. And I don't know how the others feel about that, but I do see, based on the candidates that are in front of me, that I like the idea of the commission having some clear choices as this interview process goes forward, because I'm really cognizant this is not the end. This is simply a recommendation of what the commission will put into a public process and will be and a tribal process and have opportunity for the full commission, not the governor's office, to be part of. The governor will be, whatever comes out of the subcommittee, the governor will be doing an interview and providing feedback or input into the commission. So given the state of the process, those are some overarching thoughts. I have to admit, I wasn't paying enough attention. I think your order was Debbie Colbert, Shannon Hearn, Caitlin Lovell, and then Jason Miner. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do them in that order then. Debbie Colbert brought to this interview process a lot of energy, a lot of experience in different realms in every corner of the state with different constituencies. She tied that together for me as a strength into a vision for moving the agency from where it is today, so that when I left the interview, I had real clarity about her vision for where she thought she should and would lead the agency. And she had some strong leadership skills that I think she had clear examples as we tick through our questions that were really apparent in terms of demonstrated experience, being adaptive, large organizational oversight, dealing with emergency issues, and building trust. So I saw those as strengths that she brought to the process. I think that as always, internal candidates are blessed and cursed with are coming into the organization, having been part of the organization. And so I always think about that. And I always think carefully about what we're asking of internal candidates to assume from the position they've been in with the agency or with the board representing the agency to becoming the director that's responsible for having a bit more of an arm's length in deciding where to lead and taking people that are used to seeing you in a different way and moving the ball forward to reflect your vision, not the person you were working for before. So I think that's always a challenge. Shannon is also an internal candidate, has strong administrative experience, has been through the organization vertically in a way that I had not understood until we really got into the discussion in the interview process. So real strengths in program implementation, real strengths in understanding the levers that need to be pulled to get things done. Clear that she is interested in focusing on implementation and building a pathway that has clarity vertically in the organization with staff and with stakeholders. I certainly came away from the conversation seeing that with Shannon. I think that I won't say it's a concern, but in the context of the time we spent with Shannon, I did not walk away with the same level of clarity of her vision for leading the agency forward. What I did like about the way she articulated her vision was very tactical, but in terms of emerging issues and a vision for how to recalibrate the agency for what's coming at it in the next 10 years versus the last 10, I didn't have as strong a feel for that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I did not walk away with as strong a feel about that. Enjoyed the conversation and the extensive, far-reaching discussion we had with Caitlin Lovell. I've never met her before, and I'd never, for that matter, met Shannon before. I found her to be very articulate, knowledgeable across a breadth of issues. I thought she did have a good sense of how to produce wins, and I don't know how you quantify that, but it's always interesting in an interview process when you can walk away and and understand what a candidate has done to intersect with stakeholders that has resulted in advancing whatever the particular issue was. And I saw that in Caitlin the same way I saw it in Debbie Colbert. What I wasn't as certain about, and we did spend time in the interview talking a little bit about it, was Caitlin had an intersection with a broad cross-section of stakeholders on issue areas, but I didn't come away with the same feeling that there was as much of a strength in terms of an intersection with a spectrum of stakeholders that represent the Fish and Wildlife Department's interests geographically and across constituencies, as opposed to issue areas that were the intersection of Caitlin's extraordinary body of work for the last 20 some years. I really thought that she brought a lot to the table and was I would be very comfortable having her proceed to the commission consideration at the next step. And Jason Miner, I know well, and Jason brought an extraordinarily thoughtful and deep understanding of a vision for Oregon Natural Resources as a portfolio and the challenges that are faced in getting us from where we are today to an extraordinary management paradigm in the future. He was clearly in his element and well prepared for the interview process. And again, the thoughtfulness just really came out. I think we spent time talking about some of the differences between administration of a bureaucratic 1,000+ employee agency versus overseeing an enterprise the way Jason did in his last in his job as the natural resource advisor in the last administration, and some of the day-to-day issues that are associated with being a director of Fish and Wildlife or any other large state agency that are a bit of a few degrees off from some of the experience that Jason's had. Although I thought he made some really good points about the administrative experience that he had prior to joining the state of Oregon, and he was well-founded in those points too. So I really, at the end of the day, have very little in terms of weakness in these candidates, just differences that were apparent throughout the interview process in strengths. And I think that's the way I would definitely characterize it. And I will say that I have, since I said it about Caitlin, I have no qualms and actually very positive feelings about moving Debbie Colbert along as well in the process. And I think that we have to decide whether we're moving 2 or 3 people, and I don't have a strong opinion about that. But that's a summary of how I saw the interview process to date.
Thank you very much. Let's move then to Shayna Radford.
Hi, everyone again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That was a really great rundown of the candidates. From my perspective, being the Tribal Affairs Director, and I'm in particular have been looking and listening for primarily, not necessarily the relationship pieces. I think all of the candidates have been really great at using examples of how they've successfully either engaged with the tribe, or whether it be a project or just across the state, and all of them had experience, which was great. So again, back to Jeff's comment, they are just all really great candidates. But in particular, I think what separates the candidates in my mind are around who's going to be able to strengthen the communication. It comes down to strengthening the communication pieces within kind of current policy. Typically, every agency under statute, like 183, I can't remember the actual numbers, but under SB 770, in 2001, there's specific mandates around how each agency is going to be engaging with the tribes. And so part of that is developing a tribal state tribal relations policy. And we're moving forward, thinking ahead, we're getting ready to launch the Tribal Consultation Task Force. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, who's going to be the person that's going to be able to help not only work with me, but also, of course, with our entire team and natural resources in the governor's office to really help strengthen that communication and consultation. And the rest will always follow with tribes. It's just how are you going to, I think, get that together? So I think I'll go through each of the candidates, just like Jeff. So with Debbie, again, I think as a very similar thinking is that it's always helpful to have current administrators already in the role and understanding just not only the organization and the administrative side, but also with Debbie, she has a really good vision of what tribal affairs, tribal state relations could look like. And I feel like she has really strong communication skills, being able to work through with multiple parties and diverse opinions, especially within ODF&W, which can at times be contentious. And so I really appreciated her perspective there and vision of especially around training. So training not only for the employees around tribal state relations, government to government relations, but also the commission. And so those were some of the perspectives that I had was, are you thinking about how not only the training and education pieces that can be implemented, but also the strengthening the communication through policy with each other, with the tribes and the states. So with the other, I guess, would be Shannon. So Shannon as well, an internal candidate. I appreciated her perspective of having on the ground experience, working through the department over the years and having that perspective of, again, working and engaging with the tribes directly as an example, but also, I think for her, I think it really was not being not a weakness at all, but I think it's more how could you apply that to a larger department? So being a leader in a department, I think that's really where I would like to learn more actually from her. I guess I wish there was a bit more time. So I think both of the internal candidates would be, in my opinion, ideal. Again, I think back to what the commission may or may not decide, whether there's 2 or 3 candidates. I think both of the internal candidates would be beneficial to put in front of the, I guess, the commission, but also just see where, I guess, learn more about where the tribe, I think the tribes could, the tribal perspective could be on that and how that will play out. But I appreciate both of them. Debbie stood out a bit more on that for those internal candidates. And then the third was Caitlin as an external candidate. And Caitlin, for me, was an interesting candidate because of her more urban-centric perspectives, but also understanding, I think, tribes as well. She's engaged with tribal nations within kind of the Willamette River. And not only that, but she has, it sounds like she has some good connections there. And I appreciated her statewide perspective on, especially, I think, climate resiliency. That's really, again, looking towards the future where we're trying to, these huge problems, huge issues across the state. And of course, tribal nations can be very good partners in that. And so I appreciated her already doing the work at her level where she's at. Would also, I think, love to, learn more about that. If the commission is interested in that, I think asking maybe more questions around that, where she's thinking of the larger long-term vision. So I thought she had a pretty good feel for that, but also just don't know more based off of the previous interview. And then the other external candidate, Jason, clearly has lots of intergovernmental experience and has worked with tribes in the past and some larger larger initiatives with tribes, and so there's no lack of experience or understanding there. Has lots of policy experience, previously, of course, working in various leadership roles. But I think that in that piece, I really like Jason, but I also feel like there's this lack of, I think, administrative focus around leading a department towards a goal of, where the state, the governor, and the legislature, and also the commission, the interest is. So I felt that was a little lacking, but definitely a great candidate too. But if there were, I guess, to summarize, I think out of all of the 3 or 4 candidates, I agree that the commission, should consider having both a internal and external candidate. I think that would be ideal. And again, no preference, I think, as well. And with Jeff, somewhat over preference. I think it would be good to have both internal candidates and an external, but we'll also, I think, just having one internal and one external would be ideal. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that's helpful. Coming off of, I guess, what is it? A couple of weeks ago. So
Yes.
I'll pause there.
This is hard.
It is so hard.
This is a very hard thing.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Thank you, Shayna. And it is exceptionally hard. This is the part where everybody gets uncomfortable, I think, but this is what we need to talk about. So thank you very much for doing it. Let's move to Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde.
I'm really glad that you guys were talking about how uncomfortable this makes us all right before I start to talk. Who is uncomfortable a little bit about this. It was a privilege to get to interview all 4 of these people, and I will just jump in with Debbie Colbert. I would say that Debbie is an exceptional candidate, and she scored well on many of the attributes. When you go back to that just flat list that we came up with to score people off of and listen, she has big tent experience. She has addressing issues around climate change and biodiversity loss. She has strategic and visionary leadership. She has extensive natural resource experience. She has demonstrable experience around budget and with elected officials and legislators and legislators. Thank you. And she, I mean, basically seems to me like a candidate that is very well prepared to lead a Fish and Wildlife Agency. If I was to say one drawback, I would say maybe because she is so focused and decisive, sometimes I think when she gets focused on a direction, there might need to be a step back and make sure that everybody is coming along. Just take a big deep breath. But I felt she was an outstanding candidate. Shannon Hearn is also very strong, especially I think in that big tent sort of way. And by big tent, when I say that, I'm talking about really our diverse stakeholder body across Oregon, both our urban and rural. And I thought Shannon also has direct experience working with Oregon's Fish and Wildlife, and she is very conscientious, I think, in her approach to dealing with the public, and just has that sort of a style. She brings the same battle scars that I think Debbie Colbert also has, and previous director Kurt Melcher had around living through and recovering from the ODF&W budget crisis in the past. And I think making it through some of those sort of trials is valuable. just to know. And I think that is one of the issues that we have in the back of our mind as a concern moving forward with how we fund our natural resource agency. I see Debbie as a candidate, or I see Shannon as a candidate that would kind of hold the status quo of where we've been as an agency, which is neither, you know, I'm neutral on that. I'm neutral on, different people will view that differently. I'll just state that. Okay, then, Mary, I'm going in order here by your list. So I think we're
Okay.
up to, isn't the next one Caitlin? Yes, okay. Caitlin is obviously been very successful in her career, with a lot of experience in an urban agency. I think it was intriguing that she was part of putting together a climate change, and I was trying to make notes on this. I don't think in our commission has adopted the ODF&W climate change policy, which affects all our decisions at ODF&W, and we adopted that, I think, 4 years ago. And she was early up in Portland in coming up with a climate change plan, which was a good thing, I think, given the issues around climate change. She has, I was really looking again, reflecting and looking through her resume, because I have a tendency, I think, of having my own rural bias. And so I just want to say that I was really examining Caitlin for her skill set. And I feel like she's done a lot of work around project management, like culvert repair, stormwater management. She has kind of a regulatory approach, I think, to quite a few of the issues. I do have some concern that I don't see extensive natural resource management experience outside of a real urban setting. I'm not convinced that while she has engaged in stakeholder engagement processes, I don't feel like those stakeholder engagement processes are as broad as what we face at ODF&W on literally a week-to-week basis. So that, and also I was, when we think about that big tent, I feel that all three of the other candidates bring strong skills in understanding that big tent, which is both, the urban public connecting to the environment, and the rural communities in the state. I feel like the other three candidates are much stronger on that metric. And I also feel like when I look deeply at Caitlin, I didn't see the administrative experience that it is at the scale that we see ODF&W being. It's managing, 20 people, not a couple thousand. So anyway, Jason. See, Mary,
I'll keep you on
I just
track.
feel like I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done with this. All right, I have each of these. Also, I do want to make one final comment about Caitlin. I think she is that the positions she is in Portland are really good, that she is obviously a gift to that environment. So I just really want to say that I can see that she has amazing skills. Maybe not as, for ODF&W, but she definitely has an awesome skill set. Okay, so then we get to Jason. Gosh, Jason's interview was lovely. I just left it feeling like that he is such an incredibly thoughtful person who obviously has decades of caring about Oregon's natural resources. He obviously has served in the same role that Jeff Huntington does as a natural resource director for the governor's office, which gives him exposure to many of the attribute categories that we looked at. I think when I step back and really look at Jason, I think of him as more of a thought leader or somebody that negotiates deals, which he has done in his career, like the Private Forest Accord, or maybe things around the Elliott State Forest. I don't see him in the same light in terms of as an administrator, the administrative piece of the agency. Although I just want to say, you know, as is true of all of these candidates, that they are all, you know, they're all gifts to Oregon in their own ways. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate it. I will go next. I'm going to do it a little differently than the other three people have done it. The rest of you have done it. But I'd like to make a couple overarching comments. When I look at an interview process, it is clear to me, or it seems clear to me over the years, that what people have done is what people will do. And so I try to see what their history tells us they have done. I, like others, will talk more about strengths than about weaknesses. I meant it when I said I thought that this was a remarkable group of people and that we would gain immensely and our resources would gain immensely having all four of these people in leadership positions in the state. A few specifics, though, I will talk about. First, deep understanding of budgets and science and programs in the fish and wildlife arena. Shannon Hearn, as other people have talked about, has an integrated up and down the agency set of experiences. Caitlin has immense background in these areas and experience in each one of them, not statewide as others have mentioned, but definitely deep and long. And Debbie also, I think, rates very high in this one across the subjects as well as more than one agency. A second arena is crafting solutions that overcome divisions. Oh, before I leave that one, I do want to mention, I think that Jason has high level, policy level, particularly on budget experience in those, not so much administration, but clearly high level experience running the budgets and shaping the budgets. In terms of crafting solutions that overcome divisions and maybe even create unity and will address today's and the future problems for fish, wildlife, and habitat resources, I would put Caitlin, Debbie, and Jason in that category as very high skills, especially in the climate change resilience. Others have mentioned what Caitlin has done in the urban area in terms of biodiversity loss. I think that people are coming to that more and more and working. You know, we have real strengths from Caitlin, from Debbie, and from Jason on that one. Statewide experience at high levels, either policy or administration or both. Others have touched on this one. Jason and Debbie and Shannon have the statewide experience. Caitlin, not so much, but deep experience in those things in a broad area of the state, just not statewide. one of them that I think is key is broad and varied successful experience leading large programs and groups of people. And the two that I put sort of highest on that list based on the interviews were Debbie and Caitlin. In terms of strategic, visionary, and able to bring people to agreement on complex, long-standing issues. Thinking of Jason, you know, I had a similar take on the interview that Jason is in that role a lot in the last few years and is exceptionally good at it. So is Caitlin, and that is something that Debbie has done a lot in terms of different parts of the state, delving into big, tough issues and leading in those in creative ways. The inclusivity and big tent piece, I think all four of these candidates have that in spades. I think that there is long, varied, and high level of engagement to build tribal relationships. And probably the longest one is Caitlin's, but Jason's was years in the governor's office and then in a role since then. And Debbie has been working on those, and Shannon in the agency for very many years, and successfully. And it's an important piece. And the other one that I will mention is just an ability to bring people together to negotiate and identify a path forward on issues of statewide importance. I would put at the highest of those in terms of high levels of skills, Jason, Caitlin, and Debbie. I think that Shannon has that skill, but I didn't see it as much in the interview. And in terms of the other piece of this and moving forward, do we narrow today or do we go forward with more candidates? I think it's best if we can narrow it to 3. I like the idea of having at least an internal and an external candidate. We could work with 4 and it would recognize the quality and depth of the candidate pool, but it would make Friday next week and the commission decision, it would be even more difficult to do. So it would be best if we can get to 3, but if we go with a larger number, we can work with that if we need to. I'll stop there and maybe ask the 4 of you, the 3 others of you, if you have any last discussion items, things you want to add, or we can go into a general discussion and look for a motion. Anyone want to get their oar in the water one more time?
Sorry, I was having computer connectivity issues, so I turned my camera off. No, I don't think I have anything more to say other than this is not the end of the process. And what we're talking about is making sure that the governor and the full commission have a breadth of choice and options. And that all of us will be in a position, me with the governor, you all with the commission, to kind of carry forward what you've seen, what you've heard from the subcommittee, to contextualize some of what maybe they focus on in the interviews, and flush out further.
Good point.
Thanks.
Thank you. Shana or Vice Chair Hatfield had any other comments, or would we be ready to move to a motion?
This is Shana. No comments from me.
Okay. Vice Chair.
Yes. Mary, or Chair Wall, sorry.
It's okay.
I am inclined to make a motion, but with that motion, it's mostly to get a motion on the floor and to then allow for the friendly amendment process to potentially play out here. So in a way, I am taking the easy route to start with, but then hopefully we have more discussion. So I would, and I may need, Davia, I want to make sure that this motion is correct in terms of what we're supposed to be saying at this point. We're supposed to be saying that these candidates will move forward is there some wording that I need to do? Is there something?
There's nothing in
Don't-
particular. You could say to move forward to be presented to the full commission.
Presented to the full commission. Okay. I move to present to the full commission Debbie Colbert, Shannon Hearn, Caitlin Lovell, and Jason Miner.
So you're moving forward, just to be clear.
Yep, that's my motion, and
Well, not hearing another second, I will second it to get a motion on the table so we can get started.
okay.
And I did hear you talk about a friendly amendment as a possibility.
I think that the friendly amendment process is maybe a good way to go here, rather than us dicing this multiple ways with motions. That's just a thought. I realize I've left. Okay.
Oh, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay,
I
Jeff.
guess I'm going to comment on the motion and say that I have concern that the commission needs time and space for more in-depth conversation with candidates than they might otherwise get if we put four people forward for a full-blown public hearing and executive session. And frankly, I think that the governor probably would like to have more time than she will have available for 4 people. I will note that as a subcommittee, that doesn't narrow the field down beyond what the field was narrowed to in the initial round before the second round took place. The initial round moved us very close to those 4. I think we had a candidate withdraw. We were at 5 and I had a candidate withdraw. I would prefer to see us at 3. Frequently in the director hires, and I've been doing quite a few that have not been commission appointments in recent months. As you know, we've worked very hard to move it to 2. And so 3, but I'm comfortable with either 2 or 3, but I think we should give it a try to get a little more narrow. And I guess I would note that there's nothing that says that if the commission wants to, after reviewing and interviewing those that we send to them in this round, decide they want to see more, that there's nothing that prohibits that. The commission from calling out and saying we'd like to see 2 more candidates that were finalists that the subcommittee considered. We only got 2 here and we'd like to see more. That's not a desirable situation, but it's certainly not a breach of the recruitment process, given that they're the final decision maker.
I'm
sorry, Chair. Well, I also think that the governor's office is partnering with the commission on this, and so I don't think that from the governor's offices, even though I've been delegated to be a participant on a subcommittee, I don't feel like it is great for the governor's office to make a motion on a Fish and Wildlife Commission subcommittee responsibility. So I kind of feel like it's to the two of you to put the motions on the table and we'll participate in terms of voting on it. But I feel like it's less my space to be occupying to suggest alternative motions to what the chair or the vice chair might have in mind.
So, and the only thing, I appreciate that very much, and I think it makes best sense for how things are set up. I also think that first of all, there's an echo. I'm not sure if you all can hear me or you're hearing me twice. Sorry. But I think that the reason for mentioning a friendly amendment was to elicit other people's thinking as well, so that we could actually have a discussion about what would be the best one. So if there are those kinds of thoughts, it would be great to have them. It's exceptionally difficult. I recognize that, but if there are those thoughts, it would be great to have them. And if we have only what's on the table, then we can vote or create our own friendly amendment to our own motion. So Commissioner Hatfield-Hyde, I would look to you to see if there's anything else you would like to add.
I don't think we could create a friendly amendment to our own motion. I'm just going back to, like, you know, I don't know, 4-H in the 7th grade or something. Parliamentary procedure. I don't think we can do that. But I just want to sit here for a minute and because we could take our motion off the table.
Yes, we could withdraw it.
Because what we are hearing from Jeff, I think, is that he would like to have how many candidates, Jeff, do you think are wise to move forward?
You know, Becky, I would just say if the desire by the co-chairs is to move forward in the commission process, we'll participate in that, and the governor will give feedback on the floor, and we'll participate. I think as a matter of the amount of time the commission's allotted for the process, and kind of the schedule that's baked in, I just made the point that I made. And had I made motion, I'd probably make it for 3 or 2, but I'm not gonna vote against the motion if you decide not to withdraw it.
All right. I think the reason why, I think one of the things that I have so appreciated about this process, and I think Mary will speak for herself as well, is that we have been all along trying to move through this and be very respectful to the commission's role here, the governor's office role here. And I guess, Jeff, I just don't want to damage anything with that either by moving forward. That's what I'm trying to say to you, is I don't want to. We are trying to ring a lot of bells here and be incredibly thoughtful. So I've heard what you say. I wonder if Shayna has any thoughts on this to weigh in, since she is part of our team.
Yeah, my thoughts are that I would prefer not to have 4. I think 3 is good, or 2. I definitely agree there with Jeff. So 3 would be ideal. 2, I mean, I think that's tough. There's like again, just exceptional candidates, but if there can be 3, 2 to 3, I wouldn't go for 4, but I know it's tough, but that's why we're here. So
Chair Wall and
Yes.
Vice Chair Hatfield. So maybe this will refine it a little bit. I do think that there is, based on everything that's been said here today, and that's commensurate with what I saw in the interview process, that Debbie Colbert and Caitlin Lovell need to be moved forward. Whether there's an additional candidate or additional 2 candidates, I don't know, but I do feel strongly those 2 need to be moved forward based on the conversations we've had. And I think then it's a question of whether you, either of you, have preference that the commission see another internal candidate or another external candidate as part of that. But I think that there's a break point in the 4 that seemed apparent to me based on the comments here and in the interviews. If that helps refine things.
I'll weigh in just a bit, and I echo, but I'm going to just keep going. I think that just for the commission deliberations next Friday, if we can get to 3, it would make it possible, and 4 would be very, very difficult. I also know that that's less important than the other considerations, but it would be very difficult to do Friday and come to a conclusion, or Friday and Saturday and come to a conclusion with 4 than 3. This is the tough decision to make, and I'm not nuts about being in the position of making it. Yes, Commissioner Hatfield Hyde, you had your hand up.
I did. I was potentially willing to remove our motion from the table and make another motion.
Okay, let me just say one more thing, and that is, and then that would be great to do that. I agree with what I heard from the other 2 on the subcommittee, that Debbie Colbert and Caitlin Lovell need to move forward. And so I'll stop there because you were trying to make an motion, and let's do that and get it on the table, and then I can add my other comments.
Okay. I think, first of all, I would like to remove my motion from the table and put another motion on the table.
I will remove my second.
Thank you. I think if we listened carefully to the subcommittee comments in the last however long we've been at this now, that 2 candidates did rise to the top in the comments. And so I would move to present Debbie Colbert and Caitlin Lovell to the full commission.
Second, to get that on the table. Any other discussion?
No discussion. We're happy to partner with you to go forward.
Thank you.
This is Shayna. I just my comment and support of that as well. So
okay, then Shane, let's see, we should call the roll on this one. If Michelle is still with us, could you call the roll, please?
I am, Mary. Thank you. Any particular order? Go. Okay.
No.
Hatfield Hyde?
Yes.
Huntington?
Yes.
Bradford?
yes.
Wall?
Yes, and that means the motion carries. And I think that we have a recommendation to the commission to go forward with 2 candidates. I bet that the other 3 of you would like to make a couple comments. I would like to say a few thanks because I think there are a couple recognitions that we just need to make. And so I'm just going to take a minute to do this. And then we'll talk about next steps. And first, I'd like to thank all of you because I know how difficult this is, and I have appreciated and respected the work that people have done on this subcommittee. The people that I would like to mention first are the candidates, to recognize what a grueling process this is, and now it's even more so because it's public. And these are people who stepped up to seek and be ready. I'm sorry about the echo on this important position. I also, like others have, would like to thank Modus. They kept this process fair, open, and inclusive, and helped with building what the tribal nations, the people across the state, and the union gave as input into effective attributes and scores and questions for the candidates. And also, of course, to Director Palmieri and Melcher before her for a terrific job of keeping this fair and open and credible and moving, because this could have been bogged down and taking us months later or longer. And maybe most of all to the tribes, to the Oregonians across the state and the union for making this the robust process that it's been, and engaging so fully in this process to get the best possible director for ODF&W and the staff who do the work in this agency. So let me give others a chance to add anything to those comments, and then I will also talk about next steps. Anyone else?
No, I appreciate everything about the process. Thank you so much. And again, I do think my advice for communicating with the candidates, all the candidates, is that the recruitment isn't over until the commission says it's over. That we are in recommendation phase, and that the 10th, is that right? A week from today is when the commission takes this to the next phase. So just because we've gone with 2 and we've not forwarded 2 names does not mean that this process is over. For the 2 that are not going forward from this vote.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. It's a recommendation to the commission, and the commission could pull up other people into this. Let me talk real briefly.
I would like to make a comment, Mary.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm
Nope, go ahead.
not using my raise hand feature. I just would like to say, and that the candidates that we are not moving forward at this point are precious. They are precious people to us in Oregon that are real gifts. I just really want to say that this is not very much fun. Having said that, I also want to say that we really need to be very clear right now, Chair Wall, which I think you're about to do, but I want to make sure that that happens, that we have a very set process here, from hearing from the public again, hearing from our tribal communities in the state, hearing from our governor, and hearing from our commission. So I really want, especially the stakeholder community, to understand that process, for them to weigh in early next week. And we have our interim director, Davia Palmieri, who I call Director 911, to help us understand that process too. So Okay.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Well said. And yes, I am about to go through the steps from here to next Friday, May 10th. So, and Interim Director Palmieri can add depth to my description if I miss anything, but here it is. May 7th is the deadline for questions from the public for the May 10th public forum. So those can be sent in until the 7th, and May 8th is Governor Kotek's interviews with the final candidates, a summary of which will be transmitted to the commission on the 10th. And I believe that Jeff Huntington will be the transmitter of those recommendations. On May 9th, tribal leadership representatives will meet with the candidates. They will provide written feedback from each participating tribe and verbal summary from Director Palmieri to the commission. So we will be getting these various pieces transmitted to us by people who are sitting in those rooms and making sure that we get those perspectives and views. And then on May 10th, it will be a very, very full day. It's a really important day. Public forum with MODIS and SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, asking questions. The questions that come in from the public, those questions will be summarized and sorted, and so that we have representative questions. The public comments, as they listen to that public forum, may be submitted live, and they will be summarized for the commission as well on the 10th. The commission interviews and deliberations will happen as soon as the public forum is over. We will have an executive session to do the interviews and deliberations. We'll have an executive session that in that session, we will also hear input summaries from the governor, from the tribes, and from the public on their perspectives. And then the commission will make a decision at the end of those deliberations on May 10th or as soon after that as possible. And as Jeff Huntington from the governor's office has pointed out, we could identify the need to look further afield, or we can make a decision at the end of that day or the next day, however soon we can get there. And that will be by a vote of the commission to appoint an ODF&W director. So I would second Vice Chair Hatfield-Hyde's concern and respect and thank you for all four of these candidates, and especially to the two who are part of Oregon's leadership, and we are only moving 2 of the 4 forward at this moment. So I would close there unless anybody has anything to add, and I'll just pause to see if anybody does, and I think we don't. So thank you to everyone here and online, and I think we are adjourned. So thank you very much.